I think for now, we will go ahead with the without video if at all we can.
That's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. So yeah. All right. So yeah, thank you guys. Thank you all for joining us for this webinar. So this is a very interesting topic today, and this is something that a lot of our students who are actually preparing for their MBA or aspiring to get into product management have been asking us to focus on. And luckily, we have a very good speaker today with us who has great experience in product management and is going to tell us about his journey. So before I get started, this is more like a customary thing that I do. If all of you could just put on the chat window, where are you joining from? It'll just give us an idea where you are, from, and how many people you've reached through these webinars. So you guys can just put it on chat. Wow, we have somebody from Munich, Kota, Seattle, Bangalore, Aurangabad, Andhra. Okay, great. Chennai. Awesome. I've not seen a repeat city yet. Great. Navi Mumbai. Thank you. Thank you, Shivam. Thank you, Anil, Aditya, Aishwarya. Welcome to this webinar. So, let me not delay the whole thing and let me get started. Oh, great. Gaur, you're here. We can see you now.
Okay, good.
Awesome. So cool. So let me get started. Let me just give you a quick introduction about myself. Hi, I'm Shrikala. I am the co-founder of Crackverbal. Been in the technology industry for some time before I started with Crackverbal. I'm also a Goldman Sachs woman entrepreneur, a fellow of a Goldman Sachs Women Entrepreneur Program. I'm also mentor at the Cherry Blair Foundation, where I do help women entrepreneurs across the world. Quick introduction of our speaker today. Gauhar, maybe you could just introduce yourself and, brief, because I'm going to ask you a lot of questions later.
Oh, okay, sounds good. So hi everyone, I'm Gauhar Junnarkar. I'm currently a product manager at Microsoft in the Azure division. I'm located in Seattle, Washington. I've been out of India for a very long time, since '99, but I remain very connected in some way, shape, or form. In fact, I was in India 2 days ago. I just came back. I completed my MBA from London Business School in 2008. After I completed my MBA, I worked in initially in private equity, which was a terrible time to be in private equity in 2008. And then after that, spent some years in consulting, and then gradually moved to tech. So initially I worked at Google, and then now I'm at Microsoft.
Awesome. Thank you, Gaur, and welcome to this webinar. We are really excited to talk to you.
Thanks.
All right. So a few things before we get started, guys. If you have any questions, please put it on the Q&A window. We will make sure that we address all your questions, and we'll take it in the last 10 to 15 minutes of this webinar. Please keep your questions in the scope of this webinar too, so that we make sure that we answer all your questions, right? All right, thank you. So let me get started. So let me also give you an introduction about, so before we get started, this is more about Crackverbal. So Crackverbal is a test prep and admission consulting company. We've helped thousands of students over the years. If you see on the right hand side, most of the logos are here. So we've helped students get into all top schools. If any of you are looking at doing your MBA or need help with the GMAT, please reach out to us. I will be giving you details about how you can reach out to us in the end of the webinar. All right, cool. So let me get started. This is the agenda of the day. We are going to talk about Gauhar's journey. So what I've also done is I've structured the webinar in such a way that I've collated most of the questions that people ask. I literally talk to almost 2 students every day, all aspiring to do their MBA and plan their journey to top schools. And I myself have a lot of questions for you, Gauhar. So I'm going to make sure I address the questions that students come up have, as well as my own questions. So we'll get started then.
Sounds good.
All right, cool. So before we get started, Gaur, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background, just tell me your education journey and your journey before your MBA.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in India. I went to engineering in Baroda, MS University of Baroda, which is where I met Shrikala for the first time back in the day. And finished my engineering from MS University of Baroda in '99, and then left right after that for the United States. I did my GRE at that time to pursue a master's degree in engineering, and I came to a medium-sized city in the US called Orlando, in Florida. I did a master's in industrial engineering, and really it was 2001, so it was again a terrible time to graduate. And I ended up working. I found a job with Siemens during that time, which is a giant manufacturing conglomerate. And I was in their Siemens gas turbine, so sort of Siemens energy division. So I spent about 2.5 years in Orlando working there. And then I had an opportunity to work in Germany. So I moved to Berlin and worked in Berlin for about 2.5 years as well. This was all pre-business school. Right after that, I went into business school.
Okay, so almost close to 5 years in your manufacturing industrial engineering kind of a background.
That's right. That's right.
So what was the point where you actually felt that you wanted to do an MBA, right? You already had international exposure. So you already done your master's in US. Typically, one of the major reasons that most students, want to do an MBA is, one is obviously international exposure, and second is getting into a management kind of a career, right? So what was your thought process, and what point did you feel that you were ready to do an MBA?
So I think two things. I completely agree with you. So I grew up in India, and when I was in like 12th grade, one of my older cousins finished his MBA, and he joined like a finance firm, and he was basically doing like mid-market private equity at that time. And I just thought it was so cool. Like he would talk about takeovers, and he was like buying, selling companies, and doing all this the stock market. And so I knew I was going to do it at some point. I just didn't know how or when or what circuitous journey I was going to take. So it was always in the back of my mind. So that was one. And I thought it was very cool. Second is when I came to the US, I got into a very good job, luckily. Everything was going very well. I had international exposure. I was traveling all over the world and doing all sorts of incredible things. But it was very kind of siloed in that sense. I was going to be I would have still been a manufacturing engineer, or I probably would have risen in that career, but I would have still been in that domain. And I felt like I wanted to expand beyond that domain somehow, and kind of do more than just that. And the MBA is a very unique way to get there, I think, to kind of expand your domain. Because if you really think about like most master's programs or kind of higher education in general, it gets more and more specialized as you get higher and higher. So you sort of, you become a doctor, then you become a specialist doctor, and then you become a super specialist doctor of some sort. So it becomes more and more focused. The MBA is like the exact opposite. The MBA is the only master's program I know where you sort of are focused in the beginning, but then you go into the MBA and you learn so much about finance and like human resources and this and that and all these other things that you're sort of you become more of a general manager in that sense. You become kind of it becomes a broader education. I know enough to be dangerous about several of these areas now. So so I think that's a very unique perspective about the MBA. So I think it's a very good thing for two things. One, career changers who want to sort of change and do something else, which is people like me. And then there's also an element of people who want to go, you've already done well, but you want to get a strong brand name around your name, around your education, and you think that'll sort of propel your career further. I'd say like those are the two big.
Right. So typically when you're working, doing well, earning well, suddenly shaking everything up, challenging status quo. And it's also a risk, right? It's 1 year of opportunity cost to 1 year or 2 year, depending on what kind of MBA you're looking at. Was there a feeling of, fear or risk, or what was on your mind when you actually thought, okay, MBA might be the right thing to do?
So I think I was not very smart about it. I'll be perfectly honest. I think I didn't really evaluate. I didn't even know what opportunity cost was. Let's just be honest. Like I didn't even understand what the concept was. And I just did it because it was in the back of my mind. I knew I wanted to be like this cool guy who buys and sells companies. And so I was, kind of very drawn to that, and I just did it. And I wasn't prepared financially at all for it either. So I ended up taking quite a lot of loan from banks. And my parents didn't have the money, so that was not going to happen. But I was able to get funding from banks in London, so I was able to sort of fund my program. And then I think the summer internship helps a lot because it pays you quite well. Right. So that helped me sort of fund my second year as well. Right. And then I came out, and that's when I realized that it's 2008. There's a recession going on, and jobs are just not very common. So return on investment is an issue that I would urge everyone to consider very strongly.
Right. So one big thing that when people are looking at an MBA is preparing for the GMAT, right? With a full-time job, how did you manage that, and how did you go about that process?
Yeah, so I was living in Germany when I took the GMAT the first time. I took the GMAT twice. I wish there was a Crackverbal then, because I'm pretty sure I would have done much better had there been a Crackverbal then to sort of, get a better score the first time. So the first time I did it, I didn't get a very good score. And I knew I wouldn't get into a top school. And for me, that was very important. So I took it again. So I spent almost 6 months of my life doing the GMAT, which is really not a good use of time. So I would urge everyone to sort of consider, any help you can get. It's a standardized test. It doesn't have any impact on anything, but you've got to get a certain score even for your application to be considered. So whatever it takes to get that score, just get it, right? And if it means kind of hunkering down and just doing it, taking whatever help you can to get there, do it.
Right. I agree. I think, lot of times, since it's more like you've already done so much in your life yourself, there's always this thing that, what's a big deal? It's just another test. But I guess more importantly, it's also the time that you spend on the test. And since there's so much there online in terms of the material, and it's very important to be smart, like you said, that figuring out what makes more sense.
And that didn't exist in 2006. There wasn't enough resources sort of to do it. So I scored a 720, I think, in the end, and my GMAT, which was which was a respectable score. I still say it's a respectable score.
It's still
so it's okay, but it took a lot of effort, and I wish I had help. Like I'm sitting in Berlin, like there was just no, so like even the language was an issue. So I mean, there was no way I was going to get any help, and there were no online resources like that those exist now. Hi, are you there?
Hello.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Sorry. I had a small power cut. Yeah. Okay. So.
Hey, I'm here. Shrikala, I can't hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I had a small power cut.
Okay. We're back.
Okay, we're back. So my next question to you is, okay, we spoke about the GMAT aspect of it. Why did you consider UK as an option? You'd already studied in US, done your master's. So, you're familiar with the system there. So why US and why UK and why LBS?
So I think two things. One, the US, so the UK, so every school seems to have something they are kind of like they brand themselves with. Like if you go to Harvard, you'll find that people say, hey, we are just big strategy school or whatever. If you go to Kellogg, they'll say like we're a big marketing school. NYU, they'll say like we're a big, finance school or, that sort of thing. LBS's brand is associated with internationalism. We, the school kind of really thinks we are the most, like there were 53 nationalities in my class alone. And even today, whenever I travel, and it was at least back then, it was a small cohort, there were only 300 of us. So like I had an opportunity to get, I think I know 98% of my class quite well. Like I've talked to them in some setting of some sort. And they will recognize me. Even whichever country I go to today, I meet people in that country. So it is a tight-knit group. The London Business School program is it's like a US style program, very much American program. The largest out of the 53 nationalities, the largest nationality in the program is actually American. So that's the interesting part. And then it's based in the UK. So it takes advantage of being in a sort of very high-end city right in the middle of the world, and has this US style program. So you actually make yourself as a very interesting candidate for so a big company, sort of international operations or whatever. Also, like from at that point I'd been living in Germany, so I'd been visiting the UK quite often. I wasn't really sure whether I wanted to go back to the US or not. Maybe I kind of at that point thought maybe Europe is the future and I'll kind of stay here. So I saw it as a sort of stepping stone towards towards that, and that was kind of my thinking. Hi, guys. Hi, Shrikala. Are you back?
What's happening with me today? Yes. This is the first time this is happening with me. All right. Sorry, I missed the last part. I guess you were talking about, your focus on why LBS.
Yeah. So, like I said, like I was in Germany, I was close to London, so I used to go quite often, and I really liked the school and the setup. It was a small cohort, just 300 of us.
Right.
And I also saw it. I wasn't really sure whether I was going to go back to the US or not, because I'd been living in Europe for a while. I kind of saw maybe I should sort of explore a career here versus going back to the US.
Right.
And I don't think it's a bad option. It's just what you want to do in your life. And I feel like there's a very strong brand value associated with LBS in Europe, especially, and then also kind of like in Asia broadly. So if you have aspirations of your career on that side, and and not to say that it's not recognized in the US, it's recognized in the US as well, but there's other schools in the US that are also very well known, obviously. So all the big names. You put them up on your slide. You not put up LBS over there. So.
Oh. I think I definitely had LBS, but yeah, maybe we missed it. Sorry about that. We have a lot of students from LBS though. So cool. So my next question to you is, tell me a little bit more about, how the whole course is structured, right? So you mentioned about the diversity, you mentioned about 53 nationalities and, a very close knit kind of a cohort. How is the whole course structured? Like,
So it's very much a US style program. So at least back then, there was your year one was kind of like a base they build you. So you had to take all the basic courses in accounting and finance and marketing and organizational behavior and strategy and whatnot. So they build that base, but then year two is all electives. So you pick what you want to do, and you get the right kind of you kind of almost, for lack of a better term, specialize in a particular area. the I think what differentiates LBS is the fact that you have to spend like the last, is it the last quarter or last 6 months or so, doing a real life project. So in my case, I worked with a hedge fund where I analyzed investments in clean energy. This was back in 2008 when clean energy really wasn't a thing. So I did that. I made some money in that. I was a paid engagement. And we function like a bit of a consulting team internally, and we sort of did that, right? So I think that's one thing that differentiates us. The one benefit of London Business School versus any other school for that matter is like I had to take just one, tube or train or whatever to get to the CEO's office, or like, everything is right there. That's a huge positive. Like if you go to, like when I visited, I was also accepted into Duke University. And when you go there, like, you're North Carolina, which is a great place to be, but really like all your work is in New York. So you're going to keep flying to New York City, right? So it just depends on what you want to do. And I wanted to immerse myself. I'd never lived in like a big city kind of environment. So I wanted to do that, just my preference at that point.
So how does the career services thing work? Like in India, we are very, focused on the placement aspect of it, right? However, most schools across the world, they have, you need to network and you need to figure out, reach out to people for jobs and career services team that help you. How does that work at LBS?
So it's, there is a very well organized career services team there. I think if you're like, this is my advice for anyone going in to any business school for that matter, is you've got to know what you want to do. I think there's a lot of people who don't know what they want to do. And I think that's half the problem, because the business school itself, like if you don't have a clear understanding that, hey, I want a job in consulting, or I want a job in media, or, whatever, some tech or whatever is your sort of preferred. But I think having that understanding and being able to make the case that I'm a very good fit for this is very, very important. And I think every business school will stress that, because if you come in and you say, hey, I'll try anything, or I'm kind of, I can try any kind of career, then that's not really good. No one's going to sort of sit there and help you figure it out. You're an adult and you need to know that before you go in, and you're making a big investment. So I would urge everyone to sort of think about that pretty hardcore.
Right. So interesting that you said that, because when we the applicants, what we try to do is, or when they are applying to a program, the focus is more around mapping their existing profile to what could happen post MBA, right? So say for example, if you're from a technology background, you want to pick something which is in that technology area, right? You can't suddenly pick investment banking because you really don't have any clue around that. However, it is possible that maybe, like for example, in your case, you came in from a completely different manufacturing technical kind of background and you actually got into private equity, right? So how do you know that? Because and when do you know that? Does your first semester in your B school help you figure that out? How do you know that?
I think if you're figuring it out in the first semester, it's already late. You need to figure that out before you go into business school. And that needs to be kind of like front and center of your thinking. Because if you're sitting there and you're trying, like, there's no process, or they'll do some career, they'll do some tests and whatnot that'll help you determine what you might be a good fit for. But you need to have an avid interest, and you need to have a plan. If you don't have that, then it's very hard. Like, I'll be honest, there was one guy in my class who was very interested in this whole idea of kind of like multilateral banking. So you wanted to go work for a World Bank or a International Monetary Fund or whatever. And those are not typical recruiters in business school at all. But he was very keen to do that. And he specifically wanted to work at the Asian Development Bank in Thailand. And so he was like very focused on trying to build a profile and then also network with people who know people there. in the Asian development, and he is now kind of like a big shot at the Asian Development Bank over there. And but he that was one example I can tell you of a person who had a very clear path and it was in his head, and it was not a non-traditional sort of approach, and he'd already figured it out, and he landed that role. There's a lot of people like me who made this drastic career shift, and then I've had several career shifts after that as well. So I think the business school is 2 years of time for you to get your pitch right. And let's think about it that way. Like, you get your pitch right, saying, hey, look, I have had a tech career doing this, but now I'm interested in consulting, for example, and I can be a good fit for all your consulting clients. That's a good story. I mean, I think any consulting firm will buy that. But you need to build that story, and you need to build skill sets and experiences within those 2 years to help you make that pitch.
Right. Tell me about your first job after your MBA. How you mentioned it was right 2008, and completely not the right time to be with anything related to finance. How did that go, and then how did you transition to product management?
Yeah. So when I graduated, again, like I was one of those guys who didn't have a clue about what I wanted to do. Everyone was doing private equity. So I thought like, man, I should do private equity too, because I want to buy and sell companies and I want to do all this. And that's what private equity is, right? So I kind of made this huge plan to get into, and I networked a lot with private equity executives. I made my pitch, and it was exactly what you said. Like, no one's like, why is this guy wanting to get into, this space? So I made a pitch around manufacturing, which was kind of like my work before I joined the MBA, right? So I said, hey, if you have industrial companies in your portfolio, I can help you sort of work with those, and I can make a strong case around sort of working with those and strengthening up their balance sheet and sort of listing them or what have you. And that was my pitch, and it actually worked. Someone actually bought that story and got me, gave me a job. It was a terrible time to be in finance. And this is another kind of word of caution, right? I mean, like you've got to sort of not just think about what you want to do, but also have an understanding of what the overlying sort of surrounding scenario is. I mean, I remember being in HSBC in Canary Wharf in London and seeing Lehman Brothers go bust right in front of me, right? I mean, I'll never forget that. I mean, people walking out with, I don't know, like things from the office and paintings and this and that. And it was pretty miserable time. But I think set realistic career aspirations and go into it knowing and keeping an understanding of what the surrounding world is. Now, if you have a perspective that, hey, tech is overheated and tech is not the place to be in, then really think about pivoting a little bit and think about some other career options. I did not have a plan B, but I would seriously, if I had to redo it, I would seriously consider having a plan B. After I finished, so I kind of, in private equity, I was doing this stuff. I was really doing not much. And then, there were layoffs happening. I got laid off. I was just hanging out in London doing nothing much. And then 3 of my B school friends and myself, we kind of launched a small company to turn around. We had one client. We tried to turn around this senior housing company. Basically, it's for housing for old age people in the old age. So we had this business plan that we wanted to sort of go out and turn around this company. We tried for almost 6 months to turn it around, and we failed miserably at it as well. But one thing I got out of that was I was able to build credentials in the world of consulting, saying, look, this was like a consulting engagement. I tried to turn this company around, and I can bring this skill set to you. And Deloitte actually liked that pitch. So Deloitte gave me an offer, and they said, hey, we'd like to hire you, and we'd like to, the place where we have an opening for you is Seattle. So here I was going back all the way to the US again. And I came back to Seattle in 2010 to really kind of restart my career. And then I spent 5 years in Deloitte, and then I kind of moved and joined Google right after that. So that's been the journey. And one of the reasons why I left consulting and joined tech was when I was in Seattle or kind of in this office here in the city, most of my clients were all tech companies. Like you name the tech, like out of over a course of 5 years, I had maybe 15 or 16 big clients. And out of 15 or 16 big, I'd say 14 of them were tech companies in the Bay Area or whatever. So it was just like I knew the space, I knew how these companies worked. It was an easy transition into the world of tech. And then someone makes an offer you can't refuse. So I ended up joining tech. It was also lifestyle-wise, it was much better. I was married. I had 2 children by then. In consulting, you're always on a plane, so that was another big plus for me. So that's how I'm here.
So before I get into the product management bit, I want to ask you a little bit about your consulting career, right? So what kind of focusing on? Like, was it strategy or something more focused on tech? What kind of consulting was it?
So from an industry perspective, I was focused on tech. I did a lot of M&A work because I was always interested in buying and selling companies. So that was like a key theme. I did a lot of M&A work, and then I did. So I really had but I had some strategy engagements around, like not product management per se, but like go-to-market type work. Within like larger tech companies. So that was kind of like my portfolio of. I think consulting is a great kind of career track to be on, in my personal opinion. And the reason for that is you just get so many what I call core skills at a very, very fast pace. Because if you're not good, the client will not pay for your time. That's clear. So you have to kind of get very good very fast. And your cohort, like your peer group around you, and you learn as much from your peer group as from anyone else. And my peer group is one where they will sort of, because your success will kind of translate to their success. So it's very important that you succeed in what your tasks are for them to succeed. So it's a very good environment, I think, to learn core skills. It's a great spot to land if you don't know what you want to do, because you get exposure to so many different industries and kind of you just build a solid skills base. I use that a lot in my current role.
Right. So how did Google happen, and how did you foray into product management?
So Google was just, everyone wants to work for Google, right? I mean, that was kind of like always like the dream company. So for me, it was like I was very keen. I kept applying. I applied every day for like a long time. And I had a lot of friends who'd moved, so I kept networking with them. And I ended up getting a really good role within the ad sales business at Google. So I spent some time there doing that, and really enjoyed it. I think the role itself requires a different sort of a skill set than the one that I thought I'm good at. So I was doing it, I was enjoying it, but at the same time, I was also thinking about what's my sweet spot? Where is my sweet spot? And that's half the battle in life, I think, is finding your sweet spot. Because once you get into your sweet spot, you're going to do really well, because work is not going to be work anymore. And I felt like I needed to land in that zone. And fortunately, I got an opportunity at Microsoft. So I'm now I can say confidently that I'm in my sweet spot. I'm doing work I really like. That's in a nutshell. If I have to give one word of advice to all the MBA aspirants out there, is know what you're good at and play to that as much as possible.
Right. And I think one learning that I've understood from your journey is try out things to figure out what you're good at. because you have transitioned into multiple roles to actually figure out what you're good at. And I think that has been an important journey to also get to what you really want to do.
Yeah, it's a very, like I said, opportunity cost. Like it's a very expensive way to do it. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Don't try all these careers to get to this part. Like hopefully you have the foresight and the sort of depth to figure this out before you kind of go behind a particular thing, because everything's possible. It's just a matter of finding the right people, impressing the right people, and getting there.
Right. So tell me about product management. What exactly do you focus on, and what is the key skills that are required for a good product manager?
Yeah. So I think every company seems to define it differently in some way, shape, or form. But broadly, what it is a product manager is kind of like an amalgamation of really, I'd say, three things. One is project management. Then there's a big aspect of, like, I'd say, people management, right? I mean, I think and you're not, even if you don't have people directly reporting to you, influencing kind of people in general is kind of very important. And then just there's program aspects to the job, right? So you've got to manage a big program, you've got to bring something to market, what have you. So that's what the role is all about. It's kind of like an amalgamation of the three. You'll find some people are more technical, and it really, like, it sits on the intersection of the business side and the technical side. And you need to have technical skills, but you don't need to be super in depth. And you also need to have good business skills, but you don't need to be like a marketing expert or what have you. You're kind of a bit of a general manager around that particular feature or that particular service or whatever that you have. Like, I work in the cloud business, so I think about services all the time. Like I said, like, I use my consulting skill set and everything I've learned in my MBA quite a lot, because I'm always thinking about things in terms of frameworks. I'm thinking about influencing people. I'm thinking about trying to bring a new product to market or a new service, or trying to test a new idea or test a hypothesis and sort of disprove or prove it. Everything that you do in a consulting sort of in a consulting environment. So I'd say my time in consulting has prepared me really well for a role like this. And it's just a really good sort of spot. Like, even now, like some of the frameworks I learned in MBA was like Porter's 5 forces and this, that, and the other. I still use that. I think there was a framework called PP&P. I think it's product, promotion, and pricing or something, if I remember. I just recently used that like 2 weeks ago on a presentation I was doing. These were all frameworks I learned during my MBA, practiced during consulting, and I'm using currently in my current role.
So how does your typical day look like? Like, what are your key things that you need to focus on, and what are the things that you're measured on as a product manager?
So it's nebulous in that you don't have like a sales quota that go out and hit this number or that kind of thing. So it's more about being involved in every aspect of that product, right from inception, development, to release of the product, and then after release, this after sales service, if you want to sort of call that. So it's very kind of all encompassing, and it's kind of like it's your baby. You've got to manage it. My role specifically within Microsoft Azure is to work with our partners all across the world. So we work with software vendors all across the world to bring their software to run on our platform. So so our team manages the core Azure infrastructure upon which all these softwares run. And we have this idea around purpose-built infrastructure, where we say, depending on what your use case is, whether it's artificial intelligence or deep learning or visualization or simulation, we will develop the right kind of infrastructure platform for you to run your workload really well. And really, that's my role. So I go prospect a lot of software companies all across the world. I kind of evangelize what our infrastructure platform's all about. I understand what the use case is. I come back, and then I sort of help them get enabled on our platform. And then simultaneously, what I'm doing is I'm really collecting what I call voice of the customer, because I'm learning a lot about what the software companies all across the world want out of an infrastructure platform like ours, and I'm providing that input into our product management team that works and develops the platform further.
Right. I had one question. Program management and product management. Some companies, I guess, like in Microsoft, it's almost the same. So, what is the actual difference? So, there are some companies which say program managers are, who are not actually own product owners. So, if you could just throw some light on that aspect.
Yeah, so I think everyone even in Microsoft is thinking about this right now, because I think we are the only company that has a term program management. We actually don't have a term officially about that's called product management. So everyone in Microsoft is a program manager in some way, shape, or form. And if you look on LinkedIn, you'll find most people have those types of titles. Um, they're used interchangeably, I would argue. Like I said, it's an amalgamation of, the way I see it is product management means end-to-end responsibility of everything, right? From development all the way to sort of sales and then beyond as well. That's the way I see it. And then, program management, I feel like has, you could be like a technical program manager or kind of like more focused in a particular part of that entire cycle. So that's broadly what it is, and it's I think the companies like Google and Facebook and whatnot have all sort of coined this term of product management as kind of like the a different way of doing it, and for some reason Microsoft hasn't done that yet. So
All right. So, since you also hire a lot of candidates from these schools, right? So, I remember you mentioned about being part of. You also help London Business School, and at your current role, also you hire a lot of people, from top business schools. So, what are the key things that you actually look for? For your team, or when you're looking at a B school candidate, what are the things that you actually try to evaluate, and uh, how do they make it to companies like Microsoft?
yeah, so there's a big sort of school of thought inside of tech companies around diversity. So we all want diverse sort of backgrounds, and so you need not necessarily have a strong sort of technical background to actually get a job in product management, but it'll definitely help. I will say that. So I like every role that I see in Microsoft and even in other companies. I think there is some element, at least in tech, of understanding how the product needs to be developed and how you sort of bring it to market. And so having some technical understanding and being able to communicate that is very important. Um, since I'm talking about communication, like I always look for people with very strong communication skills, because I feel like that's the most important thing as a product manager that you have. Is because you're always talking to people, you're always communicating and trying to tell them like this is the way to move forward, having the ability to influence people. So communication skills to me is a key skill, core skill that you must have. The third thing you should always consider is when I'm interviewing someone, I'm always thinking about what framework is this, what is his or her approach that they are using to solve a particular problem. I don't want to understand that you've solved a particular thing perfectly. I want to understand what is the process you've used for solving it. So I want to see a framework. I want to understand how is your mind working, whether you're being holistic, whether you're leaving out key details. I think those are some of the characteristics that we look for in product managers, and we are kind of hiring in a big way, and we continue to do so. So I would urge everyone to think about that really hard. Roles in this function are very, very cool. You will sort of product managers end up sort of going into general management in the future, and then kind of I think it's a great little track to get onto.
Right. And how much of their pre-MBA background matters, or does it even matter?
I don't think it matters what you've done. Like in my opinion, it's good you've done something really good. And like the other day, I met a candidate who had she'd worked at Intel and a couple of other like very well-known tech companies, and she had a very specific sort of background into a few of the roles that we have. So I thought she was a really good fit into one of those roles. But I wouldn't kind of make that like a must-have. I think there's enough roles in kind of in product management in general for you to find a good fit for yourself.
Right. Especially for people who are right now in the stage where they're preparing for their GMAT and applying this year, because round one is over and round two is typically in December, January timeframe, right? So, is there a way they should look at when they are looking at a career in product management? Should they, like you said, be very clear about what you want to do even before you get into an MBA, right? So, how do they maneuver their journey to an MBA once they choose the right B school that they want to get to, or they get an admit? Is there the right way to make most of a B school MBA? If they are looking at something around product management.
Yeah, I would if product management is where you want to end up, then I would, and if you don't say for example, you had a career in I don't know, media or something, and you are now looking to kind of switch and you're going to go to a career in product management. What I would do is I would sort of, first of all, you need to be sure this is what you want to do. Once you've decided, okay, this is what I want to do, then I would look for experiences, projects, anything that I can do to make the case that I will be able to make this career switch really well. This could be through either obviously through internships is the best example, but then beyond that, you can do project work. You can do, you can get involved. I think there's clubs on campus. You can get involved in these clubs to sort of build, and it'll help you network and meet the right people. So those are sort of like those are all the different channels you have to get to a particular place. Like I always think of the MBA as like a train station. So you go to a train station, there's all these different trains that are going in different places, and you've got to figure out which train you want to get onto. Because if you get onto the wrong train, then you're going to go to a different place. And and really, the only way to get out of that train station is on a train. So you've got to get onto a train. Otherwise, there's just no, like, you're not going to be successful. So so I'd urge everyone to sort of think about which train you want to get onto and where you want to go.
That's a perfect example. I'm definitely going to use this sometime. So cool. Thank you so much, Gaur. I think this is extremely, extremely helpful. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take questions. If there are things that we've already not attempted, and Gaur has already not spoken about. Rahil, if there are any questions on YouTube, you could post it on the chat window so that I can have a look at it. Okay, I have a question. Okay, currently I do M&A for a corporate diagnostic chain, but I also love strategic alliance partnerships, creating alliance for growth. Okay, what is the question here? Maybe if you could just put in some more information on the question, because I didn't get the question here. Is the question that whether MBA works, or if you could just clarify that, that will help, Rahul. All right, so before that, let me take some other question. Okay. Do you think they should take any kind of product management certification before they actually apply for an MBA? Do you think something like that?
Yeah, I think it's yeah, of course, why not? Like I would not say it's not. I would never say don't do it. I would say do it, because it just like makes the case stronger, right? So when you want to sort of use your time in the MBA to collect all the different experiences that you have pre and during the MBA, to sort of make the case that, hey, I'm going to be a great product manager. You should hire me. So that's the way I think about it.
Right. Another very interesting question. So this is someone who's not maybe applying this year and has at least a year or two before they actually apply to a B school. The question is, how do you actually build a profile for B school like LBS? Is there a formula to it, or are
Yeah.
there
So
specific things that they should look at?
I would argue that there is a formula, and I think this may not be a popular sort of perspective, but at least when I was applying, I thought there was a formula. So for LBS, I focused very much on my international experience. I said, hey, I've grown up in India, I worked in the US, then I moved to Germany, I worked there, I speak German fluently. All these things helped to make the case to get into LBS. And I think that international, I played to what I think LBS continues to look for, right? If you're applying to Harvard, then I would sort of urge you to think about like, hey, I'm a strategy consultant. I worked at McKinsey. I did, that kind of or I worked at some other company and I was part of the strategy team, because they sort of focus very much on this whole strategy thing, and they think it's Harvard Business School, so they're kind of like they see that as the kind of like their kind of like their niche. Kellogg, I would sort of think about marketing, because there's a lot of like strong marketing managers that have come out of there. So for each school, I think that, so University of Chicago, I would always say like, there's a home of the free markets. That's where, Adam Smith came up with all these different theories about capital markets and such. So I would say like, that's a good pitch to position. I'm not saying this is a formula, but I'm saying at least that's the way I think about it. And I'm not saying that a marketing manager cannot come out of Chicago or some other school or whatever, but I just think it's like every school seems to have some sort of a niche, and you kind of have to, like appeal to that niche and say like, this is, so hence I want to do a career in marketing. Hence Kellogg is the perfect school for me to do marketing, because it's such a strong storied reputation around it. So hence I think this is like the perfect program for me.
Right. Interesting that you said that, and I get a question on my mind. How important? So you had 300 people in your class, right? So 10% were from India. Like, if you have to actually look at how many
No, it's almost 20. So the largest group, 25% was American, 20% was Indian. So like Indian nationalities. Yeah. And a lot of the Americans were also like born and raised Indians. So I still count them as Indians, part of the India club. So,
right. So how important is to have a blue chip company or a brand on your resume, especially to get into?
I don't think it matters. It's always good. See, look, I'm a firm believer in brand names. So I think, brand names help a lot. They give you recognition immediately. I look at a resume, I see, hey, Goldman Sachs, whatever, McKinsey, this, that, and the other. I automatically think that, okay, this person must be smart because he or she has worked in all these amazing places, right? But I think it does not matter, in my personal opinion. I think that when you're applying, you have to use your essays very well to sort of communicate what your value proposition is. I could have worked for 3 startups and done 16 things that are like amazing, but you've got to sort of make that case. Your MBA essays is your pitch. That's your sales pitch. And you've got to sort of land that really well. That's the most important part of your MBA application. It's actually not, in my opinion, it's not the GMAT. I think GMAT is one part of it. It gets you into a pool of resumes that they want to look at. But then after that, really, it's about how you position yourself and say, how convincingly can you make the case that an MBA from this school is going to be the best thing since sliced bread for you.
That's true. That's true. Since we are at the essays part, let me just talk about how we help in the application part. Before I get to the other question, since Gauhar was anyway talking about it, so we basically focus on the admissions prep also, and we help students apply to top schools. So we have mentors from most top schools who work with us to help you apply to these schools. So the focus is completely on how to go about with the essays. So these are some of the mentors that we have from all schools, Indian schools as well as abroad. The focus is more to plan out your story, help you consult, discuss with you, brainstorm with you on what stories to write and how to write. We don't write essays, so if you are looking at that kind of a help, we won't do. We are not the right people for that. The idea is to more brainstorm, work with you to come up with the right kind of stories that are required, and plan around that, right? So if you're looking at help, you can just reach out to the details that is there on the slide, and we'll definitely love to help you around that, right? Let me come to the next question. So here there is one question, Gauhar, which is slightly more around product management. So Pranay asks, is there a definite structure to the ideation of products or sequel of products? Is it a top down or a bottom up, or can it just flow from everywhere?
I can tell you about how it works, at least in our team. I think so. There's different teams inside of Microsoft that do, I think, what you're saying in different ways. We focus a lot on voice of the customer. So for us, that is a very important thing. For us, every feature or every service we launch is a big capital investment, in the millions of dollars. So I'm not going to be able to go out and tell my manager's manager that, hey, we should just throw $5 million at this particular idea because it's an idea. So it needs to be a validated customer ask. So, we have a set of sort of what we call marquee customers, and we build a product sort of to their needs. So when a customer asks for a particular feature, we usually we talk, there's an in-depth conversation we'll have with the customer or the partner, understand exactly what they're looking for, build out the spec based on that, and then go back and understand where we can sort of include that in our dev cycle. So that's the way it works here. Now, if you are in probably a different part of the company where it's you could try, like in Google, they have this whole Google and Facebook have this whole idea around like try something and fail fast or something like that. Like basically just build something, see if it works. If it doesn't work, get rid of it. That kind of a model. I think it's good. It gives you speed or time to market is significantly reduced. But I think they churn through a lot of ideas, and there's a lot of kind of cost associated with that. So depending on what part of the platform you're on, like for us, like I said, like in the infrastructure platform, everything we do is like millions of dollars. So we've got to be very careful before we sort of take a product idea from inception all the way to market.
Right. Like you mentioned, there's another question here. This is more around, like you mentioned, there are some schools which are specifically for finance and marketing. And are there schools which are specific to product management or more focused on technology related career roles?
So I think all these schools, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, whoever, they all recruit at all the top schools. I don't see them like literally, right? Whether it's LBS or Chicago or whatever, they're there everywhere. They're always looking for good talent, and these people, they cannot hire quickly enough. I mean, there's just so much work. So I wouldn't say like there's no feeder school or any kind of like. I think even if you get into say Duke University or whatever, just focus. Like you've got to know that that's what you want. You want, and all these schools come on their recruiting calendar. You got to show up. You got to make the case for getting into it. And like Microsoft, we have like a huge organization just meant they're all recruiters. Their whole job is to just recruit talent. And there's like hundreds of people who are just doing this on a day-to-day basis. So I don't think there's any school that that we miss, right? And we kind of go wherever we can find talent, and we're always looking for good candidates.
Right. Does proximity of the company to the school matter?
So I will add one thing. So for example, if you are say doing your MBA at University of Washington in Seattle, we have a very well organized kind of co-op program or like a internship program for students over there. So they definitely have a leg up because they're local, they can come, they can work, they can all that kind of stuff. So I think it's definitely a positive. It's the reason when I went initially from India, I went to Orlando, Florida. That's the reason I chose Orlando, Florida, is because there's a small group, there's Disney, there's a small group of companies around there who recruit very regularly from University of Central Florida, which is where I was studying. And I actually ended up taking an internship at Siemens and ended up working for Siemens. So that was my strategy. Is like I will intern there and I'll convince them during my internship that they should hire.
Right, right. There's another question around, the number of experience you need to have before you apply for an MBA. Were there people in your class, or now even when you recruit, are there people who are with who come with a very high pre-MBA experience, and they've done their MBA? Does it even matter to you? Say, for example, there's someone who spent 10 years or 11 years before an MBA, and comes with a lot of experience. How do you, as a recruiter, look at it, or does it even matter to you?
It doesn't matter to me. I rarely even look at it. Uh, you're in a way you can think about it as like after your MBA, your career is reset. So you kind of like are starting from scratch again. And if you've done, so if you worked, like I worked for 5.5 years before I came into the MBA, and like I should have just done it like 2 years out. Like I should have just done it after 2 years. Shouldn't have waited for 5.5 years. But I don't think it matters so much, in my opinion, what you did pre-business school, because your career resets after your MBA and you kind of start from scratch at that point.
Yeah.
And if you have, and if you kind of, if you're that person who has sort of, say you were an investment banker before business school, you came into business school and then you continued your career in banking, you're already one step ahead of me, because I'm a career changer, whereas you already know what to do in the banking job. So it's a big positive compared to someone like me, right? So I think those are some of the things you should think about, is like, that adjacency. There were a lot of lawyers who came into business school and they already knew law and corporate law really well, and then they went into investment banking, which was like a perfect fit, because they already knew all the law aspects of banking, and they could sort of translate that into a world in bank into a career in banking.
Right, right. I think I have pretty much covered most of the questions. I'm just scrolling through. So there's a question here. I have 6 years of international experience in insurance non-tech domain. I would like to get into consulting. What can be the story around to focus on as a generalist profile?
I think there's a lot of insurance companies who are clients of consulting firms. So I think you have a very strong sort of background. I don't think you should kind of if you I think that's a very normal transition. Consulting, in my opinion, is a great, like, you can be from any sort of past career and get a job in consulting, because we'll always find clients in that space in the future. So say, for example, I had a friend in my class. She used to work for Boeing before business school, and she came in and she joined the airline practice. She was basically she became a consultant for airlines, and at Bain or one of these very large consulting firms. And she's now the head of their kind of global practice. For you can come from a pharmaceutical background, go into consulting, and then suddenly you can go into consulting, and then suddenly your clients are like Roche and Merck and whoever else, right? I mean, big pharma companies. So I think it's a very good sort of place to land.
Right. I guess I'll just take one last question. So there's a question that says, how do product managers actually decide on an MVP for a product?
I think it depends from each team from team to team. Like I said, like for us, if I have to think about like our Azure business and the core infrastructure platform, and MVP itself is like a big capital ask, right? I mean, it's a big I have to go out and get a whole bunch of money sort of reserved for not just development, but also like buying hardware and standing up the platform. So I think those are some of the considerations that that are there. I think it might be different if you sort of think about like some other kind of like other company. It might be easier to do it in some other companies. So I think it depends from company to company. What is their risk appetite? What kind of product it is, and where what they're trying to do with it. I think broadly.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Gauhar. This is amazing talking to you, and we got a lot of insights around what it takes to get into product management after an MBA. And I'm sure, most of the people who are attending this on YouTube as well as on Zoom have got all their questions answered. This video is also there on YouTube. So if at all you want to revisit or go through it again to understand a little bit more about it, feel free to watch it on the Crackverbal channel. Thank you so much, Gaur. Amazing talking
Thanks.
to you and catching up after so many years.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting and got to learn a lot. This is also episode 3 of our careers post MBA, so where we've already spoken about healthcare and consulting, and now we spoke about product management. We also have another webinar coming up on the 19th with a career in supply chain management with an alum from Ross School of Business. So please register yourself for the 19th November webinar too. All right. So cool. Thank you so much, Gauhar. I know it's really early for you, and really, really appreciate that, you joined us. I think it's around 6:30 or 7 for you.
7 a.m. Yeah. It was good though.
Yeah. So
it was great talking to you.
So
thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, all of you. Really appreciate you joining us for this webinar.